Meg Cabot, When Lightning Strikes, Chapter 3. I live, since it's probably important to give my address in this statement of mine, with my parents and two brothers in a big house on Lumley Lane. Our house is the nicest on the street. I'm not saying that to brag, it's just true. It used to be a farmhouse, but a really fancy one with stained glass windows and stuff. Some people from the Indiana Historic Society came once and put a plaque on it, since it's the oldest house in our town. But just because we live in an old house doesn't mean we're poor. My father owns 3 restaurants downtown, only 8 or 9 blocks from our house. The restaurants are Mastorani's, which is expensive, Joe's, which is not, and a takeout place called Joe Jr.'s, which is the cheapest of all. I can eat at any of them anytime I want for free. So can my friends. You would think because of this that I would have more friends. But besides Ruth, I only really hang out with a couple of people, most of whom I know from orchestra. Ruth is first chair in the cello section. I'm third chair in the flute section. I socialize with a couple of the other flutists, second and fifth chair mostly, and a few people from the horn section, and 1 or 2 of the other cellists who have gotten Ruth's seal of approval. But other than that, I pretty much keep to myself. Well, except for all the guys in detention. My bedroom's on the 3rd floor. My bedroom, my bathroom are the only rooms on the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor used to be the attic. It has low ceilings and dormer windows. I used to be able to fit my whole body in one of the dormer windows. And I liked to sit up there and watch what was going on Lumley Lane, which usually wasn't very much. I was up higher than anyone else on the street, though, and I always thought that was kind of neat. I used to pretend I was a lighthouse keeper, and the dormer was my lighthouse. I'd look out and watch for boats about to crash into our front lawn, which I pretended was a treacherous beach. Hey, come on, I was a little kid back then, okay? And in the words of Miss Goodhart, even then I had issues. Anyway, to get to the 3rd floor, you have to take the staircase, which is right inside the front door, in which my mom calls, in this French accent, the foyer, which she pronounces foyer. She also calls Target, where we buy all of our towels and stuff, Target, as a joke. That's how my mom is. The problem is, right off the foyer is the living room, which has French doors that lead to the dining room, which has French doors that lead to the kitchen. And so the minute you open the front door, my mom can see you all the way from the back of the house, through all those French doors, way before you have a chance to make it up those stairs without anyone noticing. Which was, of course, what happened when I walked in that night. She saw me and yelled, since the kitchen's actually pretty far away, "Jessica, get in here!" Which, of course, meant I was in trouble. Wondering what I could have done now and hoping that Mr. Goodhart hadn't gone ahead and called her anyway, I put down my backpack and my flute and everything on this little bench by the stairs and started the long walk through the living room and dining room, thinking up of a good story as to why I was so late, in case that was why she was mad. "We had band practice," I started saying, by the time I got to the dining room table, which has this buzzer built into the floor beneath the chair at the head of the table, so the hostess can step on it and signal to the servants in the kitchen that it's time to bring out dessert. Which, since we have no servants, is just this huge annoyance, especially when we were growing up, since it's impossible for the little kids to stop from buzzing something like that all the time, which drove my mom, who was usually in the kitchen, postal. I was rolling with it. "Yeah, band practice went long, Mom. On account of the hail, we had to run and stand under the bleachers, and there was all this lightning. Look at this." My mom held a letter up to my nose. My brother Mike was sitting, kind of slumped, at the kitchen counter. He looked unhappy, but then he never looked happy a day in his life, as far as I can remember, except when my parents got him a Mac for Christmas. Then he looked happy. I looked at the letter my mom was holding. I couldn't read it since it was so close to my nose, but that was okay. Mom was going, "Do you know what this is, Jessica? Do you know what this is? It's a letter from Harvard. And do you know what it says?" I said, "Oh, hey, Mikey, congratulations." Mikey said, "Thanks." But he didn't sound very excited. "My little boy." My mom took the letter and started waving it around. My little Mikey going to Harvard. Oh my God, I can hardly believe it. She did a weird little dance. My mom normally isn't so weird. Most of the time, she's pretty much like other moms. She helps my dad out sometimes with the restaurant, like billing and payroll, but mostly she just stays home and does stuff like regrout the tiles in the bathroom. My mom, like most moms, is totally into her kids. So Mike getting into Harvard, even though it's really no big surprise, seeing as how he got a perfect score on his SATs, was a really big deal for her. I already called your father, she said. We're going to go to Mastroni's for lobster. Cool, I said. Can I invite Ruth? My mom made a little waving gesture. Sure, why not? When have we ever gone out for a family dinner and not brought Ruth? She was being sarcastic, but she didn't mean it. My mom likes Ruth, I think. Michael, perhaps there's someone you'd like to invite? The way she said someone, you can tell my mom, of course, meant a girl. But Mike has only ever liked one girl his entire life, and that's Claire Lippman, who lives 2 houses over. And Claire Lippman, who is a year younger than Mike and a year older than me, barely even knows Mike is alive, since she's so busy starting in all of our high school plays and musicals to pay attention to the geeky senior down the street who spies on her every time she lies out on her carport roof in her bikini, which she does every single day without fail as soon as school lets out for the summer. She doesn't go back inside either until Labor Day, or unless a cute guy in a car drives up and asks her if she wants to go swimming at one of the quarries. Claire is either a slave to ultraviolet rays or a total exhibitionist. I haven't figured out which yet. Anyway, there's no chance my brother was going to ask someone to go to dinner, since Claire Lippman would be like, now, who are you? If he ever got the courage to talk to her. No, Mike said, all embarrassed. He was turning bright red, and it was only me and Mom standing there. Could you imagine if Claire Lippman had actually been present? There's no one I want to ask. Faint of heart? Never one fair lady, my mom said. My mom, besides frequently talking in a fake French accent, also goes around quoting from Shakespearean plays and Gilbert and Sullivan operettas. On second thought, maybe she's not so much like other people's moms after all. I got it, Mom, Mikey said through gritted teeth. Not tonight, okay? My mom shrugged. Fine. Jessica, if you're going, allow me to assure you that you're not going in that. That was what I normally wear. A t-shirt, jeans, and my Pumas. Go put on the blue calico I made for Easter. Okay, my mom has this thing about making us matching outfits. I am not even kidding. It was cute when I was 6, but at 16, let me tell you, there's nothing cute about wearing a homemade dress that matches the one your mother has on. Especially since all the dresses my mom makes are of the Laura Ingalls variety. You would think, considering the fact that I don't have any problems walking up to football tackles and punching him in the neck, that I wouldn't have any problem telling my mother to quit making me wear outfits that match hers. You would think that. However, if your father promised you that if you wore them without complaining, he would buy you a Harley when you turned 18, you would wear them too. I said, okay, and I started back up the stairs, what used to be the servant staircase, back at the turn of the century. The 19th into the 20th century, I mean, when our house was built. I'll tell Douglas. Oh, I heard my mom say, Jess. But I kept on going. I knew what she was gonna say. She was gonna say not to bother Douglas. That's what she always says. Personally, I enjoy bothering Douglas. Also, I asked Mr. Goodhart about it, and he says it's probably good to bother Douglas, so I bother him a lot. What I do is I go up to the door to his room, which has a big keep out sign on it, and I bang on it really hard, and then I yell, Doug, it's me, Jess. Then I just walk in. Douglas isn't allowed to have a lock on his door anymore, not since my dad and I had to knock it down last Christmas. Douglas was lying in his bed reading a comic book. It had a Viking on the cover with a girl with big boobs. All Douglas ever does since he came home from college is read comic books. And in all the comic books, the girls have big boobs. Guess what? I said, sitting down in Douglas's bed. Mikey got into Harvard. Douglas said, I already heard. I expect the whole neighborhood heard. Nope, I said, that's not it. He looked up at me over the top of the comic book. I know Mom thinks she's taking us all to Mastorani's to celebrate, but I'm not going. She's going to have to learn to live with disappointment. And you better keep your hands off me. I'm not going no matter how hard you hit me. And this time, I might just hit you back. It's not that either, I said, and I wasn't planning on hitting you. Much. What then? I shrugged. I got hit by lightning. Douglas turned back to his comic book. Right. Shut the door on your way out. I'm serious, I said. Ruth and I were out in the storm underneath the bleachers at school. Those bleachers, Douglas said, looking at me again, are made of steel. Right? And I was leaning on one of the supports, and the lightning struck the bleachers, and the next thing I knew, I was standing like 5 feet from where I'd been. I was all tingly and all over. Bullshit, said Douglas, but he sat up. That's bullshit, Jess. I swear it's true. You can ask Ruth. You did not get hit by lightning, Douglas said. You would not be sitting here talking to me if you had been hit. Douglas, I'm telling you I was. Then where's the entrance wound then? Douglas reached out and grabbed my right hand and flipped it over. The exit wound? The bolt would have had to enter you in one place and left you in another. There would be a star-shaped scar in both places. As he'd been talking, he let go of my right hand and grabbed my left and flipped it over too, but there wasn't a star-shaped scar in any of my palms. See? He flung my hand away in disgust. Douglas knows about stuff like this because all he ever does is read, and sometimes he reads actual books as opposed to comics. You weren't struck by lightning. Don't go around saying stuff like that, Jess. You know lightning kills hundreds of people a year. If you had been struck, you'd definitely be in a coma at the very least. He laid back down and picked up his comic book again. Now get out of here, he said, giving me a shove with his foot. I'm busy. I sighed and got up. Okay, but you're going to be sorry. Mom says we're having a lobster. We had lobster the night I got acceptance letter to state, Douglas said in his comic book. And look how I turned out. I reached out and grabbed his big toe and squeezed it. Okay, big baby, just lie there like a big lump with Captain Lars and his big busted beauty, Helga. Douglas looked at me from behind the comic book. Her name, he said, happens to be Una. Then he ducked behind the comic book. I left his room, closing the door behind me, and went up the stairs to my own room. I'm not too worried about Douglas. I know I probably should be, but I'm not. I'm probably the only person in my family who isn't, except for maybe my dad. Douglas has always been weird. My whole life, it seems. I've been beating up people who called my older brother a retard or spaz or weirdo. I don't know why, but even though most of the time I'm way smaller than them, I feel obligated to punch them in the face for dissing my brother. This freaks my mom out. But not my dad. My dad just taught me how to punch more effectively by advising me to keep my thumb on the outside of my fist. When I was very little, I used to do it with my thumb on the inside. Consequently, I sprained it several times. My thumb, I mean. Douglas used to get mad when I'd get into fights because of him. So after a while, I learned to do it behind his back. And I guess it would be humiliating, having one's little sister constantly going around beating up people on your behalf. But I don't think that contributed to what happened to Douglas later. You know, this past Christmas when he tried to kill himself. I mean, you don't try to kill yourself just because your little sister gets into fights over you in junior high or whatever. Do you? Anyway, once I was in my room, I called Ruth and invited her out to dinner with us. I knew that even though today was the first day of what would be another one of her diets, thanks to Jeff Day, Ruth wasn't going to be able to resist. Not only was it lobster, but it was Michael. Ruth tries to pretend she doesn't like Michael, but between you and me, the girl has it bad for him. Don't ask me why. He's no prize, believe me. And just like I knew she would, she said, well, I really shouldn't. Lobster's so fattening. Well, not the lobster really, but all the butter. But I guess it is a special occasion, what with Michael getting into Harvard and all. I guess I should go. Okay, I'll go. Come over, I said. Give me 10 minutes, though. I gotta change. Wait a minute. Ruth's voice grew suspicious. Your mom's not making you wear one of those gay outfits, is she? I remained silent. Ruth said, I don't think a motorcycle is enough. Your dad should buy you a damn Maserati for what this woman puts you through. Ruth thinks my mom is suffering from oppression of a patriarchal society. consisting mainly of my dad. But that isn't true. My dad would totally love it if my mom got a job. It would keep her from obsessing about Douglas. Now that he's home again, though, she says she can't even think of working, since who would watch him and make sure he stays away from the razor blades next time? I told Ruth that, yes, I had to wear one of my mom's gay outfits, even though gay is the wrong word for it, because all the gay people I know are really cool and would sooner drop dead than wear something made out of gingham, except for Halloween. But whatever. I hung up and started undressing. I pretty much live in jeans and a t shirt. In the winter, I put on a sweater, but seriously, I don't dress up for school like some girls. Sometimes. I don't even shower in the morning. I mean, what's the point? There's no one there to impress. Well, at least there hadn't been until Rob Wilkins asked me if I wanted to ride home. Now that might be worth a blow drying for. Only, of course, I couldn't let Ruth know. And she would totally know. The minute I swung by to pick me up, she'd say, "Moose much?" Though she'd probably approve, at least until she found out who I was moosing for. Anyway, while I was undressing, it occurred to me that Douglas might have been wrong. There might have been a star shaped scar somewhere else in my body, not necessarily on the palms. Maybe on the bottom of my feet or something. But when I checked, my soles were just pink as usual. No scars, not even any lint between my toes. It was weird about Rob Wilkins asking me if I wanted to ride like that. I mean, I hardly knew the guy. We had detention together, and that was it. Well, that isn't strictly true. Last semester, he'd been in health with me. You know, Coach Albright's class? You're supposed to take it as a sophomore, but for some reason, okay, probably because he'd flunked the first time around, Rob had been taking it his senior year. He sat behind me. He was pretty quiet most of the time. Occasionally, he'd have a conversation with the guy behind him, who was also a grit. I'd eavesdrop, of course. These conversations generally revolve around bands, grit bands, mostly heavy metal or country or cars. Sometimes I couldn't help but butting in. Like once I said that I really didn't think Steven Tyler was a musical genius. The artist formerly known as Prince is the only living musician I'd ever call a genius. And then for about a week, we kind of dissected their lyrics, and Rob eventually agreed with me. And once Rob was talking about motorcycles, and the guy behind him was going on and on about Kawasaki's, and I was like, "What are you, high? American all the way." And Rob gave me a high five. Coach Albright hadn't exactly been there in the classroom a lot. Football emergencies kept coming up, requiring him to leave us to work on the questions at the end of the chapter. You know the kind of questions. The spleen performs what function? The adult male generates how many sperm each day? The kind of questions you instantly forget the answers to as soon as you pass the class. I decided that for school tomorrow, I might wear this Gap shirt Douglas had given me for Christmas. I'd never worn it to school before because it had a scoop neck. Not exactly the kind of thing you'd want to wear while while taking down a quarterback. But hey, if that's what it took to bag a ride on that Indiana. It wasn't until I was buttoning up my hideous lilac-colored Laura Ingalls dress that I glanced at my reflection in the mirror and saw it. This fist-sized red mark in the middle of my chest. It didn't hurt or anything. It was like I had suddenly broken out in hives or something. Like someone had slipped a bad clam into my shells and sauce. From the center of the red mark radiated these tendrils. In fact, looking at it in the mirror, I saw the whole thing was, well, kind of shaped like a star.